Yes, the condition of college football summed up tonight by two group of five quarterbacks sitting out. So we had two backup quarterbacks going head to head in the G5 matchup between South Florida and Old Dominion. Yes, the Old Dominion quarterback and the South Florida quarterbacks are now sitting out of bowl games. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here for the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. And I just have to say it. I understand why these decisions are made, and they are certainly acting within their rights as it's currently situated in college football. They're currently acting within their rights to make that decision to sit out these games. However, at the same time, I think number one, what needs to happen is that there need to be stipulations placed around these bowl games. The bowl games are, in many instances, more important than regular season games. It could be argued in many cases, especially for group of five teams that have no chance of playing in a college football playoff situation. Now, I understand that South Florida had a really strong season at 9-3. They were in the playoff chase late in the season. They had the big win against Boise State and against Florida early. They gained some attention and played some meaningful games. Old Dominion had a nice season at 9-3. Again, stayed within a couple touchdowns of Indiana, had a nice season. But just consider this, that when you turn on a South Florida Old Dominion game in late December, I say this all the time, and I've been saying this ever since this diminished perception of bowl games, is that more people are watching Old Dominion and South Florida play football than at any other time this year. Every time Old Dominion, especially, now South Florida, we'd have to go maybe to the Miami game, but that was on the ACC network. We'd have to go to the Florida game, which I also believe was on the ACC network. So maybe the Florida or the Miami game was not. I know that one of them was. I believe the other one may be on ESPN2. So it might be a bit of a stretch, or it might be close in this matter. But when you go from team to team to team to team throughout the group of five, for sure. And then you even to delve into the lower ranks of the less popular teams in the power conference structure, they are playing in front of more people on television than anybody pays attention to Old Dominion in South Florida from week to week during the college football season. We have the hardcore of the hardcore college football fans in this chat right now. And I don't know if any of you watched this game. I actually flipped it on late, but I started from the beginning, and I just made it through the first half. And if anybody's watching college football tonight, they're watching these two teams play. From week to week during the season, nobody watches these two teams play. Nobody watches Old Dominion play. None of you chose to watch Old Dominion play football this year unless you know somebody on the team. None of you chose to watch South Florida play football this year, except maybe against Boise State, since that was played exclusively in a week zero situation, or week zero. No, it was a week one situation, but on a Friday where nobody else was playing. That's the reason I watched the game. So I'm losing patience, and I'm just kind of losing understanding, which I never had. So I'm not losing it. I've not had understanding of these lesser teams shunning bowl games and the players on these teams. And I just think a simple fix, I'm not a lawyer, but a simple fix is for the schools to get together with the NIL collectives and say that we play football, contractually, we play football through the end of our season, which may end in postseason play in a bowl game. And therefore, the players should not be paid the entirety of their NIL contract unless they play in the bowl game. Simple as that. I don't see what the issue is. And then as I posted on X, I believe it was today, it might have been yesterday, that to me, if you opt out, you have every right to do so. If you have other priorities like staying healthy, even though you chose a career in a collision sport, you're preparing for the NFL draft, or you're just sitting out because you're a prima donna and will pick it up with your team next year, or you're going to enter the transfer portal and you just have yet to alert anyone to that you're a quitter. You are a quitter. Now, your actions throughout the rest of the season and the offseason may not speak to that. You may watch sufficient amounts of film and lift weights and do all the things that are required of you, but you're a quitter. You quit on your team. Your teammates are going out and playing a competitive football game on national television. Again, something Old Dominion does not encounter hardly at all. And when they do, it's because the other team is the team that's being broadcast nationally. They were the choice of the network to broadcast the other team's game, not Old Dominion. Basically the same thing with South Florida, just up the ante just slightly in regards to their level of popularity, their level of prominence in the sport. So nobody watches Old Dominion and South Florida play football except for every December if they can make a bowl game. And then for their two quarterbacks and maybe other players I'm not aware of, but the two quarterbacks opted out of the game makes no sense to me. And the sport is going to continue to be hurt by this because we're not going to see teams at their best on the field, and have already suffered through that for almost 10 years now. All right. I did not necessarily expect to go on that rant, but that was the game I was partaking of with very mild interest. And the less the players care, the less I think it started with the players. Basically, we can blame the players. We can blame programs, administrators, the powers that be that run the sport for most of the problems. Most of the problems we encounter in college football have nothing to do with the players. The players might be taking advantage of certain situations and policy and guideline changes that have impacted them to their favor that we don't necessarily back or support, but they didn't make the policy changes. In this one instance, the players obviously are now taking advantage of a situation in which they can quit playing. They can quit the team. They're basically quitting the team in all practical senses, but they're not quitting the team formally. Okay. All right. So they're quitters again. Just don't like it. Just don't like it. And it causes me not to really care much about the sport nearly as much as I used to. And I got to tell you, I forgot this would have never happened in the past, would have never happened ever, probably prior to about 3 years ago. I always knew when all the bowl games were being played. I knew who was playing in the bowl games, like all 41 bowl games, locked and loaded. This is when they're being played. These are the names of the bowl games, who's playing in the games, what networks covering the game. Obviously, ESPN almost in every instance, but still the various networks and the time of the game. And I've got it all lined up. And it just killed me to miss a bowl game. It killed me to miss a bowl game. Back when, if we want to go back before, obviously 3 years ago, but years and years ago, when the technology was not present, unless you were going to put a VCR, VHS tape in a VCR and tape the game, which I would do many times. But if you didn't have the foresight to do that or whatever, you didn't have the digital technology to catch up with the game. So I needed the technology back in the 1980s and 90s when I cared so much. I wanted to see every bowl game, and it almost physically hurt me to miss a bowl game. Now, I got to tell you, Corey Bradda let me know that there was a bowl game yesterday. I had no idea. forgot about it, didn't think about it. Did I watch it? I can't even remember who played. Jacksonville State and Troy. Yes. I turned it on after the fact. I turned it on, I believe, after this show. No, we didn't have this show. I turned on the game after the fact, and I just thought, as the voice of college football and as somebody who just believes in hard work and being knowledgeable and being up on everything, and it's just ingrained in me, and some part of me can't let this go, that I do have to watch this. I do have to understand what's going on. I got to know about Jacksonville State. I've got to know about Troy. I'm going to put this game on. I'm going to learn about these teams because I don't watch these teams all season. There are other better games to watch. But after a handful of plays, what am I watching this for? I'd much rather watch like 83 other things that I have. Did I say 83? Like 830 things that are more entertaining or going to build my life better than watching Jacksonville State and Troy play. So I will get back into it, I believe, this weekend. I don't know how much I'm going to watch these games after my experience tonight. South Florida, it became the same kind of deal. South Florida and, yeah, ODU. And I started watching the game again after the fact. Stayed away from the score. I know that ODU won the game. But as soon as I learned that the two starting quarterbacks were not playing in the game, that kind of just sent me from like here to like even further down. So no, we've got, I believe, another game being played right now. We'll check up on that score as we always do. Of course, we keep track of the scores. And then we've got a full slate on Friday, including the one game that I will watch, Oklahoma and Alabama. It's kind of funny because we started the Ohio State show today, and Steve Hellwagon started in on the matchup. And, of course, coming up, Ohio State, and we don't know yet, Texas A&M or Miami on New Year's Eve. And it hit me, although it did hit me earlier, that I made plans on New Year's Eve. And it didn't even strike me that there's college football on New Year's Eve. Now, I should be the first person that it would connect. Oh, there are football games, of course, important playoff football games. But you know what? I had an offer I couldn't turn down, and it didn't even strike me until the next day. And I thought, oh, I'm going to miss the games. Well, I'll watch them later. No big deal. They're on. That's why we have technology. But I'll go live my life, and I will enjoy myself on New Year's Eve and have a big shindig. All right. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We do this for an hour every night through the end of the national championship game. I'm actually, in a sense, as much as the playoff, I'm looking forward to producing content in the off season because I've got all sorts of ideas for ratings and rankings and all-time rankings and such, and reviewing the TV ratings and the schedules for 2026 and all that business. Can you believe that? But no, I will get into the football when I see Miami and Texas A&M on the field. Alabama and Oklahoma, even though we've already seen that game, I do believe that that's going to be a good game. I don't know. A close game, I do believe. And the more I size it up, the more I like Oklahoma. I have not made, check that. I have made an official prediction. It's available on Patreon. So don't want to give that away. Our fine folks on Patreon, we appreciate your contributions. And you get my predictions. I predicted the first 14 bowl games. And I believe I'm at least 2-0 against the spread. Again, I'd have to check on that because I don't even know who won last night's game. So 2-0 for the games that I am aware of. I did watch Washington and Boise State until it got out of hand. All right, folks, we do appreciate you. And we will get to the phone lines. And I do understand that there's some news to get to. So we will do that as well if time allows, because you got me for an hour plus whatever you want. I do have plans tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time. 6 p.m. Eastern time. And therefore, I guess we could do a show for, we could do like a what would that be, like an 18-hour show? We could possibly do that. That is up to you. I would stick around for 18 hours, bathroom breaks, maybe a snack here and there. But besides that, I am available for 18 hours. No, actually, I got something at 6. Got to jump in the shower and all that. I get a lengthy drive for a couple hours. 3 o'clock. I can stay till 3 p.m. Eastern time. Then my company would probably not be too happy that I'd been up all night, but that would be fine. Let's test that theory out. All right, here we go. We got the phone lines open, and again, one last thing I will say before we get to the real MVP would be that the most important thing I will say today will be that the Amazon links in the description section of this video and all the videos here at the Voice of College Football on all the channels. So when you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. Obviously, you're on Amazon doing your last minute Christmas shopping. They deliver like in a day or two. So there's still plenty of time to do your last minute Christmas shopping. And please use the link that we provide. Absolutely. All right. The real MVP's here.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this evening? Hello, Mark. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing just fine. I don't know if you said anything before that. I did not have the volume turned up, but good evening to you.
I appreciate it. This bowl season's really dragged. We just got a bunch of bad football playing, and that's, I think, the worst part of it. Since you watched the South Florida Old Dominion game, just horrendous, ugly, terrible football that like a 2-10 team can perform. I'm honestly at the point, like, the way I would fix it, obviously regionality, storylines, and I would just make it no minimum requirement. Everyone plays a bowl game. It'll be seeded by, I don't know, a record or conference affiliation. And then games are played at the home team campus for the bowl game. And you just replace the logo of the center with the bowl logo. Honestly, that's probably the best way to save it because, I mean, this isn't an exclusive thing anymore since, I mean, Delaware, Missouri State, Arkansas State are making bowl games. I mean, those are bottom of the barrel teams. I know they win 6-6, but we all understand that they're probably within the 35 worst teams of the sport. So,
yeah, that's the deal. Like I said, when the quarterbacks for G5 teams are opting out, and I know this is just one pass, it's just one play. It's not like the top quarterbacks in the sport don't make a bad pass, but the first quarterback or the first pass thrown by the Old Dominion quarterback, he's throwing basically a screen pass. He's throwing a very short, shallow out, like a 3-yard pass, like 3 yards down the field. Obviously, he had to throw it much further than that, but a simple pass. The ball bounced like literally 4, 5, 6 yards in front of the receiver. Like he almost threw it like behind the line of scrimmage. It was such a bad pass. And I thought, is this what we're going to see for the next few hours? Then the other quarterback, the South Florida quarterback, this guy has bounced around to Tennessee, which I don't know, based on what I saw, I don't know that he had any business thinking he could compete for a job at Tennessee at one point. And I vaguely remember his name. Then he went somewhere else. I don't recall, UCF. And now he's at South Florida. He took a job last year in his chosen field, was already starting that job, and he got a call from South Florida, and they said, hey, because one of the coaching staff members left UCF to go to USF and said, hey, we need a third string quarterback. You want to come down here? You got another year of eligibility. So he quit his job just, he could stay in school another year, play some football. And it seemed like every time I looked up, he was taking a sack because he just didn't know where to throw the ball and was just standing in the pocket forever. And then finally would just eat the ball.
Yeah, it was some of the worst football I've seen this season.
Yes.
So just honestly, UMass in a bowl game just because it'd be funny to see UMass be terrible. Like that would be more comical than what I watched today. Because when you get to a certain point of being so bad, it's comedic relief. these teams weren't that bad. It was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. This was boring bad, which is the
Yeah.
worst type of bad you can have possibly. Now, since bowl games are meaningless, I want to go to something way more important, and that's what Ross Dellinger reported today. Mark, I'm not sure if you saw, but we got some more clarifications on the random MOUs that were signed in spring of 2024. Have you heard about these?
I did not.
Okay, so it is official. First off, these are officials. So Notre Dame, if they are in the top 12, will make the college football playoff regardless of what happens. I know a bunch of people in your comment section on your video you released about Notre Dame says, well, this hasn't been signed by everybody. Actually, yes, it was signed by literally everybody that mattered. All of them agreed that Notre Dame, for whatever reason, if they're in the top 12, makes the college football playoff. Miami would have been out, okay? First, we know this is a joke. We know this is stupid. It's moronic. The second thing was they changed very sneakily the language of the 5 highest conference champions in terms of rankings. That is gone. That language has been eliminated. It is the 4 Power 4 conferences automatically. Their conference champion is in the playoff. And then the highest G5 conference is in. So Duke would have made the playoffs instead of Duke's.
Part of me still has no issue with that. I would have issue with the situation, the circumstances, the tie-breaking system that we've discussed that allowed Duke to play in the conference championship. But part of me has, you know what, all of me as a traditional and purist, even though this is connected to a college football playoff, has no issue with a team ascending to the top of the conference. Let's say they lost all 4 non-conference games, but they were legitimately the best team during conference play, which Duke, by most measurements, was not. They did go 6-2 in the conference, but as you have pointed out, and it's great statistic, could not defeat a team that had a winning record in the conference. So it's more for me about the tie-breaking system. But if a team could play, and this is a rarity beyond rarities. Duke is an example, and I'd have to go back to UCLA of 1983, I believe, was the year that they went 0-3-1 outside the Pac-10 at the time, and went undefeated in the conference, went to the Rose Bowl. Then you would have that kind of circumstance. But I would be fine with that as long as the tie-breaking system truly rewarded the teams that excelled the most in the conference.
Yeah, I think that's the crux of the problem. Is I don't think that system exists because their conferences are too big.
Yeah.
So I just think instead of the ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and SEC automatically get their conference champion in, it should just be the highest ranked team. That's what it should have been. I know it's not pretty. I know it's not rewarding, but these teams are playing such diverse and different schedules. They're basically playing a different, and within a different league, almost. Like, Miami and Duke had nothing in common this entire season. Like, if you asked your average college football playing, what team does these two teams play in the same conference, you could fool them. Because they almost had no common opponents. They played different caliber of football. Their non-conference schedule was completely different. So that's unfortunately where we are at the sport. But do you think it's right that an 8-5 team in the Duke should just automatically get in as a Power 4 since they are a Power 4? Because I've seen G5 people push back and say, well, you're taking away a spot from one of us because James Madison wouldn't have made it this year.
Well, I hate to answer your question with a question, but I'd like to know this from you since you're an NFL fan as well, and I once was myself. It doesn't appear, I know that it pops up on those rare occasions when there is a division champion in the NFL with a sub 500 record. We've seen it a few times, and it's made light of, it's kind of made fun of, that I remember, but truly no one seems to have that much of an issue with it, right?
Correct. Well, people have an issue with the fact they get to host a home playoff game in the first round.
Yeah, the most egregious example of that is the Marshawn Lynch game against the Saints. This was about when was this? About 2010. I think it was right after the Saints won the Super Bowl with Drew Brees. The next season, they were a wild card team, but they were 13-3, and Seattle was 7-9, hosting a playoff game against a 13-3 team. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it happens almost every year now where some division goes 8-9, 7-10, 9-8. Oh, yeah. So almost every year. The AFC North, their winner's probably going to be 9-8, 8-9. The NFC South for like the last 3 or 4 years with the Bucks or the Saints has been 8-9, 9-8.
Yeah.
So this is a once yearly thing. So I think that has numbed people to the reality. And then some 12-5 team, 11-6 team goes in there and beats them soundly, and then they're just an afterthought.
I got you. And obviously that again is an example of what happens when you play with divisions or conference size. And in this case, it's the exact opposite impact, but it's just as damaging. Well, no, it's not as damaging, but those kind of situations pop up where, because they reduce the size of the conference or the divisions, because they expanded from 3 divisions in each conference to 4, I believe in 2002, then you have 4-team divisions. And especially some of those are traditionally weak divisions like Houston, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, and who am I missing?
The Tennessee Titans.
Tennessee. Yeah. So you've got a traditionally weak division there, and then you produce, the Houston Texans for like 4 years in a row go to the playoffs, and they're really not that good. It's kind of an opposite type. That you actually have teams that are competing against each other, and the only reason they're mounting wins is because they're playing each other a lot, but they're really even worse than their records because they're able to mount some wins against each other, and they're no good against anybody else. It's kind of the opposite issue that college football has with the 18 team conferences.
Absolutely. And even with the NFL, I think the level of parity in it is a reason why people aren't as upset. Like this is a perfect example. The worst team in football, or one of the worst teams, the Las Vegas Raiders, who were 2-11 first week of the season, went to Foxborough and beat the 11-3 Patriots. Like that just doesn't happen in college football. Like Delaware's not going to Miami or Oklahoma and winning a football game. So I think that's why people have a less of a problem with it in the NFL and college.
I'm curious. I'm looking up Duke's schedule because I'm just checking you on the number of games that they overlapped with Miami. So NC State, Syracuse. That's it. 2. They played NC State and Syracuse right at the beginning of their conference schedule. And the rest of these teams, Miami did not play. Okay. There was only 2 overlapping games between Duke and Miami. There were more overlapping games between a number of teams that I could name. Like Notre Dame overlapped more games with some ACC teams.
Right. I bet there's non-conference from different leagues that happen to play 2 games that match the same. Now, it's probably pretty rare, but, it's just a complete sign that the sport isn't where it needs to be in these. Ironically, we need divisions. Like people said, we didn't need divisions, but since these conferences have gotten so large, we need like divisions or pods or something like that in order to do like an NFL style.
Yeah.
I know it's not equitable, but you get, let's say, 4 teams in a pod. You have 4 or 5 pods, depending on how big your conference is. You play everyone within your pod. You play a different pod, and then you play the 2 teams that are within your standing of the pod. So all the first place teams will play, all the second place teams will play, all the 13th place will play, and all the 4th seeds will play. Now, that's not equitable, but it will increase the parity of the sport because you'll have some Cinderellas that improve more and they play weaker schedules. You'll have some heavy hitters fall. So you get more diversity and more excitement and more engaging for more fan bases.
Yeah, we're going to do a big workshop at the end of the season and take everybody's proposals and ideas. And then I'm going to have to go to work and really think it through so I don't screw up and release something where I missed something. But I believe that we have released in the past some very good ideas concerning scheduling and division formats and so forth that work and playoff selections. But start from start to finish in regards to the cleanup of the conferences. Not that we're going to restructure. We're not going to play fantasy land. We can do that another time where we're going to go back and set up conferences that we like. No, we're going to have to work with the framework because the powers that be are going to stay generally with what they have now, and then work it through with a reasonable scheduling fix and then a reasonable college football playoff format fix. Will be fun to do.
Absolutely. The final thing I'll ask you about is what's making you lean Oklahoma in this game? Because, like, I understand they won the first game. That's the most obvious thing. But
Sure.
outside of that, what is screamed that Oklahoma is a better team than Alabama?
Okay. So to start on your side of things, I would say that conventional wisdom or the conventional first look would be okay, Oklahoma won this game. However, Alabama moved the football better. And Oklahoma continues to struggle moving the football against just about everyone. And if Alabama can take a breath, take a breather, reset, as we often see teams do going into postseason play, where they might have had a drag of a finish, but they're able to kind of, catch their breath, reset, refocus, and come back and be just a new team 3 weeks later. That Alabama's got the passing attack to do it. And obviously, again, move the ball for over 400 yards versus just over 200 yards that Oklahoma had. I just posted a video with the common opponents breakdown, which some people would say, why are you doing a common opponents video for two teams that played? Well, I reviewed the game that they played as well. But when you think about it, that's just one game. And that's just one sample of what could happen when those two teams played. But if you take very capable opponents, the LSUs and Missouris and Tennessees and Auburns, et cetera, not great teams. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they're talented teams. And you match up all those results against it. We're talking about one head-to-head plus 5 common opponents. We're talking about 6 like games. Then maybe we can draw some conclusions. And what I drew from there, and to finish my rebuttal starting on your side of it, is that not only did Alabama outgain them, and I watched that game, and Ty Simpson for most of the game threw the ball extremely well and had decent protection in the game, but Oklahoma had an 87-yard interception return for a touchdown. How often is that going to happen? They had a 50-yard punt return that set up a touchdown. That's basically how they scored their touchdowns. Defense scored a touchdown, then they had a 50-yard punt return for a touchdown. Alabama missed like a 34-yard field goal. Are they going to do that again? Probably not. So a lot of that on the surface favors Bama playing much better in the rematch. However, as you look at these performances against all of these teams, you realize a few things here. If Ty Simpson cannot stand in that pocket and deliver the ball, whether that's because of his offensive line can't deal with a really talented, ferocious defensive front from Oklahoma, or he kind of has the yips and is still not the Ty Simpson of earlier this season, then Alabama is in deep, deep, deep because that's what they rely on. They got outrushed by everybody. They don't run the ball well. He's not going to run the ball. Whereas if Oklahoma is struggling on offense, which they have, they inexplicably had this really great rushing game. And I know Tennessee's not a great defense, but again, a lot of talented players on the defense. Oklahoma, for some reason, ran the ball that game, but every other game, like their running backs don't run for hardly anything. It's mostly the John Mateer show, and that's even limited. But they do have a quarterback who's kind of like he's the SEC version of Mark Gronowski. He's not going to wow you like Michael Vick or Lamar Jackson, but he's effective in the open field. He's a tough runner, and that just provides that 3 to 5 times a game in which you can move the sticks when your opponent could not. I was also surprised by this, Darrell. for as pedestrian as Oklahoma's offense is, and all the detractors that came out the day that they were selected for the playoff and said they don't deserve to be in the playoff just because their offense sucks. And I know you're not in that camp, but I saw that all over Twitter. In those the 5 games against common opponents, Oklahoma actually averaged more yards per play on offense than Alabama did, 5.3 to 4.9 against like 5 good opponents. That surprised me. And then their yards per play defensively, even though Alabama's got a really good defense, Oklahoma's is like top 5 in the country, really limited their opponents. So once I start, they have one of the best field goal kickers in the nation. He's the guy that I voted in the Football Writers Association as my first team kicker. He's really good, 7 for 7, I believe, from plus 50. If it's that kind of game, which it was, he kicked the game winner in Tuscaloosa. So I'm leaning Oklahoma.
No, everything you said makes sense, and I think it's a very close argument between the two teams. That's why they're ranked 9 and 8. That's why the spread keeps flipping between Alabama and Oklahoma being favored. I'm surprised Oklahoma's offense is as good as you've said, because that's what they're notoriously bad at, according to everybody. I think Oklahoma has the most proven or second most proven defense in the country behind Ohio State. They're 1 and 2 in my opinion. I think if Oklahoma wins this game, they can only win it one way, similar to Alabama. So it wouldn't shock me whoever wins this game. I just expect it to be close. I think this is going to be a very ugly, close football game. If it's a blowout, that's the only thing that'll surprise me.
Yeah, a couple other things that stand out here as I'm checking out my notes is that I think this is a big key in Alabama's success against those 5 opponents. Ty Simpson threw 9 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. John Mateer threw 6 touchdowns and 4 picks. Now, the Oklahoma defense and interceptions they're obviously not random, but there is a random nature to overthrows by quarterbacks, obviously deflections, batted passes at the line, that sort of thing. But over the course of 5 games, I don't think this is coincidental. Oklahoma had 7 interceptions defensively against those 5 opponents. So there's some interesting things there. 3rd down, 4th down efficiency, both offensively and defensively, was about the same, although Oklahoma's 3rd and 4th down defense was really good at like 27%. So, yeah, Oklahoma held up pretty well statistically.
Yeah, I think the reason Oklahoma is not getting a lot of love in this playoff is just because people hate defense and special teams. People are more fascinated by the 38-41 type games instead of the 17 or 13-10, 10-7 type games. I think if they were just the complete opposite in terms of offense being their only weapon, people would be like, this is a team that can make it to the national championship or make it to the semifinals and play spoiler. But to me, either team that wins this game is going to give Indiana trouble, not in terms of like, will they win the game? Even though that is possible, it's like, man, this is going to be a 1 possession game throughout most of the game just because it's going to be ugly the entire game. So neither team's going to have that many opportunities to get explosive plays, move the ball a lot. Field position is really going to determine that area of the bracket. But I've been talking too much, Mark. I need to get going to let some other callers breathe, get a chance. I guess shout out to the Blue Hens, Mark. I mean, Blue Hens are flying hot.
The real. Appreciate him being here as our first caller. We've got 3 more calls for you. We got about 19 minutes left. Let me get to the super chats. All right. Evil Badger 72. The reason why the G5 conferences are included in the CFP is to avoid litigation. The reason why some ACC teams play 8 conference games is because Notre Dame is not an official member of the ACC. Okay, I can speak to the second part of that with complete knowledge, and that is not accurate. So every team in the ACC plays 8 conference games, unless you're speaking about this 2026 schedule that just got released. If you're talking about that, I've not looked into that. DeReal called the other night and let us know that that the ACC was going to a quasi 8-game conference schedule, with some teams staying with 8 for another season, but going to 9 games with other teams because of previous contractual agreements outside the conference. I saw a story on that. I didn't dive into it yet, but I just saw that the ACCS is transitioning, which I hate to use that term in this day and age. So hopefully they're not transitioning in other ways, but I wouldn't put it past the ACC. But transitioning from an 8-game schedule to a 9-game schedule, and they get kind of caught in the middle, apparently next season in 2026. But in terms of the current ACC structure that goes back to basically when they added all those teams from the Big East, Louisville, Miami, Boston College, etc., Pitt, Syracuse, then they went to an 8-game schedule and may have actually had one before that. I know if you go back to like the late 80s, early 90s, the ACC was kind of the oddball. They played on like a 7-game conference schedule for a long time. They only had like 8 teams, but they went to an 8-game uniform schedule. They split into the divisions and obviously played everyone in the division and 2 teams from outside the division in the other division. But I don't get your second comment again, unless you're talking about going forward, because that's not accurate. Some teams don't play 8 games and others play. No, they all play 8 conference games, and then some of them play Notre Dame. And that is basically a rotation. If you go from 2015, when Notre Dame first signed the contract with the ACC, so we're now looking at 11 full seasons with Notre Dame playing the ACC, and almost every year that's been 5 games. A couple of years that was 6 games that Notre Dame played the ACC. It's generally a rotation, although the ACC and Notre Dame made an adjustment to that a few years ago to put Florida State, Clemson, and Miami into the rotation more often because they wanted to make more money. I have no issue with that. Just more difficult games, obviously, for those 3 schools, but more money for them as well, since they get a higher percentage of the revenue distribution. They get a 60-40 split in terms of 60% that is weighted toward the TV ratings beginning this past season. Okay, the first point there, shoot, we got Adam on the line here pretty soon. Maybe he can speak to this. The reason why the G5 conferences are included in the CFP is to avoid litigation. I am not as well read on the sport as I have been for my entire life, especially like the last 5 years since I broke away from ESPN and have done this like 90 hours a week. But for like the last year, not quite as well read on the sport. But I would have thought that I would have heard that or read that somewhere else besides from fans. I've seen that from fans. I've not heard that reported from anyone, and I might be mistaken. It might be out there. Yeah, I don't know what that litigation would be as all being members of the NCAA, possibly. Okay, but I will not discount that. I just have not heard that from a reliable source. All right, and then we do appreciate Adam being here. Are we overrating, quote, best teams and underrating matchup equity? In a 12-team playoff, should we focus less on season-long resumes and more on which teams can actually threaten the top seeds and win the title? Well, weighing the resumes accurately, weighing them justifiably is, I think, the direction we should go. The other is just so subjective. I don't want a subjective. I want to go more in the direction of objective than subjective myself. I also don't want to, this may sound ridiculous, but the way many of you argue, and I'm not, let me be clear. I'm not saying that this is a bad point. I'm just saying, do you truly want to go in this direction? And do you want to wait this season? Meaning it's not a complete season, start to finish, with all the games measured equally. When we look at a team's record, obviously the record says all the games are of equal value on the surface. Ole Miss is 11-1. Their first win counted as much as their last win. Okay, this sounds ridiculous. However, most of you are in a nuanced way promoting this, or I should say some of you, I don't know if it's most of you, that we wait the season as we go. So why don't we just do that formally? Make the first game worth 1 point, the second game worth 2 points, the third game worth 3 points, and put in like an NHL scoring system. Which again, on the surface sounds stupid, but that's what it sounds like a lot of people prefer. And let's make the last game of the season worth 12 points. Or whether they're worth 1, then 1.5, then 2, then 2.5, or whatever, and make it official that yes, the first game counts, but it doesn't count as much as the 6th game or the 10th game or the 12th game. Why don't we do that? Like, and not make it so arbitrary. Like, oh, well, they're better now than they were. Okay, well, then let's put in a system that weights the games. All right. I guess I addressed that. Matchup equity, 12-team playoffs. Should we focus less on season-long resumes? Yes. But for me, the season should count as the season. Although I completely understand the argument that we want the best teams in December to be playing in the playoff. I choose to acknowledge the entire season. All right. We have about 10 minutes left in the show. Is that another? Here we go. We've got Eric showing up. We appreciate you, Eric. Evil Badger coming back with this one. Where are my contacts? Evil Badger 72. Thank you so much for the contribution. Typical SEC fans saying any team outside the SEC is a crappy team. If we only had SEC teams in the CFP, it would be a conference championship. That would be boring. Stop complaining to real MVP. Now, I understand how that comment, Evil Badger, could be applied to some of our conversations with the real MVP, but in terms of tonight's conversation, I'm not understanding where you're coming from there. But at least you put a name to your complaint there, because for a while there, I was going to say, is this one of these comments where you say, you know, they said this, or they are doing this, or they're delusional, and you don't really identify who you're targeting. But in this case, I see that you're targeting the real MVP and other SEC fans. I don't have any retort to that, because basically my experience is that I've encountered biased fans for every team and every conference. We got a good guy, Nathan Brown, does an exceptional job with the Big 12 Mafia and with College Football Mafia now. And we bring on Nathan all the time. And what does he do? He touts for the Big 12. And I've got to call him. I'm kind to my guests. Let's understand this. Sometimes I get some criticism. You should have jumped on him. You should have jumped on. I tend to back off. Like the other night, I had Brad Tejeda on here, who used to be at Keen's Insight. And he made, and Brad's a great guy. Love Brad. We've been working together for a long time. We've had him on here a number of times. We usually have him on the Miami channel, so you may not be familiar with him. But Brad made a ridiculous comment. I almost wanted to make a video out of it, saying that Miami was the most popular team in the sport and had the best TV ratings. And I think if you go back and watch it, you could see the veins in my neck popping out. Like, this is, and Brad's a smart guy. He's a great guy. I love Brad, but that was a moronic statement. He's living in a Miami Hurricanes world. He knows they had a great TV rating against Notre Dame. That's all he knows. That's all he knows. And then, all the Miami fans, and this could be said about almost every fan base, probably all of them, although I don't really think the Purdue fans get together and talk about how great their TV ratings are. But they talk amongst themselves, and so they're complete blinders to what's going on in the rest of college football. And it was just the most insane comment, and I just couldn't let it go. And I said, well, Brad, hang on just a second. I said, did you actually say that Miami was the most popular TV draw in college football? And he's like, yeah, well, obviously they're. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I was thinking, okay, Mark, don't make him look bad by completely correcting him and just making him look like a fool. But you have to call him on this. There's no question. Number one, Miami and Notre Dame played like the fourth or fifth most watched game of the college football season. One game. And let's count the other team. Let's look at the other team. The other team was Notre Dame. So they had something to do with it as well. And that number 4 or 5 game in the college football TV ratings also had about half the audience of Ohio State, Michigan, and Ohio State, Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, which were the 2 most watched games of the college football season. And then what people don't look into as well is that Miami and Notre Dame played on a Sunday night on Labor Day weekend, meaning they had no competition. None. Zero. You're watching college football, you're watching them. Every other game on the list that I saw of the top 20 games in college football this year, they all had competition. Even Ohio State, Michigan, with almost 20 million viewers, had like 6 or 7 other games on that were actually getting decent views. 2 million here, 1.5 million there. That could have been watched by 32, 34, 35 million people if that was all there was to watch. Not even counting that when Miami plays anybody else that within the ACC, nobody's watching these games. Stanford, Syracuse, nobody's watching these games. When Ohio State and Michigan go out and play Rutgers and play Maryland on FS1 and Fox and Big Ten Network, people watch those games. Not as much as when they play Penn State and Iowa and Oregon, but still 2.5, 3 million, 3.5 million people are watching those games. So, it has crossed my mind, and I was about to ask to reel this, but we'll delve into this during the off season. Maybe this channel should just become me basically policing the communication, the social media posts, the media out there in college football, because it's insane what gets talked about and reported as fact. There are so many people out there spewing just complete crap that is non-factual, that's inaccurate. It's unbelievable. I try to stay away from Twitter because every time I go on there, I see like 4 posts in a row that I'm like, this is a moron. This is an idiot. This person has no idea what they're talking about. And when they're like fans that have like 13 followers on Twitter, that's fine. But some of them are actual sports writers and they have no idea what they're talking about. So we do appreciate Evil Badger being here. Thank you for that. The SEC is the best conference in college football until proven otherwise. That doesn't mean that the SEC is going to win the national championship or even have the 2 best teams in the sport. But top to bottom, I will argue with anyone, unless something drastically happens in the postseason to change my mind, which could happen because these will be the most important games among the most important teams. The SEC far outplayed everybody else, top to bottom, again, accounting the entire 16-team conference. All right, Adam's here with this one. Mark, the Michigan story is not scandal, it's romance. Yes, it is. Sharon Moore believed in love, destiny, and the staff directory. It's always good to have a staff directory handy. Honestly, cracking down on romance at Christmas feels a little heartless. Yeah, it's unfortunate that they had to break that up. Absolutely. We will make sure, since we are running out of time here, that we will get Adam here because he's basically sponsored the show. So we've got Adam here. We appreciate Adam stopping by. So we've got Adam jumping on board. Adam, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, thanks so much for having me on and for reading my ridiculous comment. I appreciate it.
I enjoy the sarcasm.
I'm glad you recognize it, or else people would think I'm crazy. So, yeah, I'll be quick. I wanted to just talk briefly about Alabama versus Oklahoma, because the more and more I think about it, the more and more I don't think the game is going to be close. I think Alabama is going to blow them out. The reason I say that is because Alabama is not going to turn the ball over 3 times like they did last time. They're not going to lose the field position battle like they did the last time. I mean, Oklahoma scored 13 points on offense with great field position each time. But most importantly, when Ty Simpson threw for 326 yards against them, he did so because Oklahoma's secondary could be exploited on intermediate routes. And my thought is, if Oklahoma's playing double high safety and they blitz, there is going to be room in the middle of the field over the linebackers and before the safeties to hit those post routes like they did in the second and third quarter of the first game. Now, if the safeties come up, you're going to have some possible explosive plays with Williams and Bernard on the outside on verticals. So I think that's going to be a factor. And I also think that is going to set up the run, because Oklahoma is not going to be able to stack the box. And when that happens, you're going to see Jam Miller, I think, have a game that's going to be impressive. Now, why is this so important? Because if they get by Oklahoma, which I think they will by a score of 31-13, I think they match up pretty well against Indiana. I think the challenge against Indiana is going to be in the trenches. But this defense, especially if LT Overton comes back, can stop that Indiana offense and could potentially win a 20-17 game. And then after that, it's either Texas Tech or Oregon, both of whom I think Alabama could beat. And ultimately, I think the only team that threatens Bama after that is not Georgia. It's Ohio State. I think that would be, if they face Ohio State, that could be a difficult game. But I think if they get past Oklahoma, which I think they will for the reasons I stated, they have a clear path to the national championship game. And it's going to be because Ty Simpson is going to exploit that secondary, because they are not going to turn it over. They're not going to lose the time of possession or field of position game. And they are going to exploit that Oklahoma secondary. And I want to know what your thoughts are on that opinion.
Did you hear my call with the real MVP?
I did not, because I was.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just asking because I ran all this down, but I'll run it down again.
Sorry.
Here is my counter. No, that's problem. That's fine. This is my counter to that. So I understand on the surface. So you broke it down even more in depth than I did in regards to the pro Alabama side coming back from the loss at home by 2 points. I watched that game. Alabama doubled them up in yardage. So I'm going to extend on your point first. Alabama doubled them up in yardage when Ty Simpson had time to throw, which was most of the game. There were like 4 or 5 game-changing plays by the Oklahoma defensive front to put pressure on Simpson. But for the other 35 dropbacks, he had a clean pocket for the most part. He was delivering the ball. He had 326 yards passing. Bama was moving the ball for over 400 yards between the 20s. Oklahoma only had 212. Oklahoma was aided by a 50-yard punt return, which rarely happens. That can't be counted upon. They were aided by an 87-yard interception return for a touchdown. They were aided by Alabama missing a 34-yard field goal, which you would expect them to hit most of the time. And if you look at the statistics, the kicker for Alabama does hit those 85-90% of the time. So a lot of things did work in Oklahoma's favor. However, I counter with this. Oklahoma has consistently put that kind of pressure and made those kind of havoc plays in opponents' backfield. That wasn't like a fluke, like they figured out a scheme or a blocking assignment breakdown by Alabama continuously, and they just fooled them with their blitz packages and hit it that particular day. they've done that all season. Also, it would surprise some people. So I just posted a video where I broke down the 5 opponents, common opponents for both teams, which may on the surface cause people to say, why did you go to the problem of breaking down 5 common opponents when they actually played? Well, yeah, I looked at that game, but when you think about it, that's one football game, and that is the most important or the most valid one because they actually played each other. But they also did play 5 common opponents that are all decent football teams, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, those type of football teams within the SEC. And it would surprise some people within those games, within 5 games, that's almost half a season, that Oklahoma's pitiful offense that people criticize had a better yards per play average in those games than Alabama's, 5.3 versus 4.9, while Oklahoma's defense only gave up 4.2 yards per play versus Alabama giving up over 5 yards per play. And I think Alabama's defense is really good. I just think Oklahoma's got one of the top 5 defenses in the country. And there's just a number of other metrics in which Oklahoma is just superior to Alabama. And to your point, Alabama can't run the football, and I don't think that they're going to start against Oklahoma.
Okay, so those are good points. What I would say in response is that in the first game, Alabama is driving for a touchdown before Ty Simpson throws that interception. That interception will never happen again because on that play, number 10 from Oklahoma came up the A gap, unabated completely. I don't think that they are able to do that again. I think that that's a scoring opportunity that Alabama capitalizes on next time around. We also had, of course, a missed field goal. So I think Alabama left a lot of opportunities on the field, but I keep going back to the secondary. Like you said, for most of the game, Ty got protection. And I do not think Oklahoma is going to be able to stop Williams, Bernard, even Latsier Brooks, Isaiah Horton. If they run those intermediate routes, I think what we're going to see is the safeties are going to start to come up to try to cut that off, and we're going to see explosive plays on verticals. I think that I agree with some of your points, but I just think Alabama is due with a healthier team now to show what it was earlier in the season. And if they do that, I do think Indiana's a great team. But I think Alabama's corners and Alabama's secondary can contain their wide receivers. And I do believe that Indiana's secondary will be tested by the depth of Alabama's wideouts. And if that happens, I do see them getting past either Oregon or Texas Tech. Where I see them struggling is Ohio State. And if that happens, I think that would be a challenge. But I feel like one point you made, that Oklahoma depends on these kind of chaotic plays to either get turnovers or stop drives. They're still ultimately low percentage chances, and I think the luck is going to run out for the Sooners. But, hey, we'll see what happens.
They are low percentage plays for most teams. They are kind of random. There's a randomness to that. Interceptions are basically – there's obviously teams that are better at intercepting the ball than other teams. But in individual games, there are a lot of – interceptions that are based on a receiver running the wrong route, a blown coverage, a deflected pass, an overthrow by a quarterback where a safety is just standing there and the ball hits him right between the numbers, those sorts of things. But over the course of time, it's almost like looking at Iowa's defense and special teams for a number of years where it's no longer coincidence. That's how they play, and they are able to consistently turn the ball over and score. Oklahoma gives up a low percentage of 3rd and 4th down conversions against those 5 opponents. It's much lower than Alabama's on defense. And also, I forgot to note that just a couple days ago, I voted for my Football Writers Association ballot. The Oklahoma kicker is the best kicker in the country. He's 7 of 7, 50 yards.
Yes, he's excellent. But I think Alabama puts it all together in this game. And I think the result that should have happened, absent those turnovers, would have been a pretty solid Bama win. Now, somebody in the comments mentioned Georgia. Certainly, I think Georgia, of course, could, be a difficult game for Alabama. But I do believe that Alabama has a tougher matchup against Ohio State than it does against Georgia, which it beat in Athens. But Friday will tell the story. I'm debating right now. I'm in Milledgeville, Georgia right now. I'm going back to New Jersey next week to see my mom for Christmas. I'm debating leaving tomorrow from Milledgeville and driving to Norman and going to that game. It's a 12-hour drive. I may do it. So, it's going to be exciting. And look, you make some good points. We'll see how it goes. But I say roll Tide.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Mark.
you being here.
Have a great night.
You too. All right. We have extended past, but we do have a caller on the line, so we want to respect that. We've got Trey standing by. Trey, what's going on? Give me your best minute here. It's all yours.
Let's see. I'm going to look at this. I did a prediction. I'm going to say it right now. I think Miami and Texas A&M is going to be the best first round game. You got two good teams. Miami's a good team. They're not as consistent, but they surely have firepower, and Texas A&M does too. Carson Beck can shred the defense. If he's on a good day, Texas A&M can give up a lot of points and a lot of yardage. We've seen that time and time again throughout the season, especially through Texas. I think Miami beats Texas A&M, and I think Oklahoma beats Alabama and more handily. I think Oklahoma can shut them down. Alabama just leaking oil everywhere, and they're not going to do much. And I also pick Texas Tech, not Texas Tech. I'll pick Oregon and Ole Miss really to cover. But in the championship, I'll pick Oklahoma and Ohio State. Think about it. You got it. I'll tell you why. If you look at the path Oklahoma has, it's not as bad as the others. I'm not talking about the group of five, Ole Miss or Texas Tech and Oregon. I'm not talking about those guys. Oklahoma, when they get past Alabama, they'll get Texas Tech. They're not as good as defense as Oklahoma. They've been inconsistent at times, even though how good they are. And Texas Tech offense is kind of average. I mean, their defense really gives them the position. That's how good their defense is. They're basically their offense in a way. But Oklahoma can shut down Texas A&M, and then all of a sudden Indiana. Then you got the two battle defenses of Indiana and Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma give Mendoza a really bad day. You've never seen a defense like Oklahoma. They're worse than Ohio State in the way, or very similar. And he did not fare very well. Oklahoma's going to be battle tested with good defenses along the way. But Ohio State, they should beat Georgia. Georgia's offense is not as good as it was previous years. I think they're going to have to struggle versus Ohio State's defense and shut them down. Another point of the Ohio State and Georgia, it's about who can move the ball better. I think Ohio State can move the ball better than Georgia when they face, because Gunnar Stockton never seen a defense like this. Ohio State held Indiana to 13 points. No one did that in the whole season. And I think Ohio State is going to give Georgia a really bad day. It's going to be like that 2015 Alabama-Ohio State game in the playoffs. That's how bad it's going to be. It's going to be bad.
Well, that was a close game.
Well, later in the game, basically it was dominated by Ohio State. They let them back a little bit. I think Ohio State had that handle the whole time.
Ohio State was losing 21-6 in that game.
Too. In 2015 playoff game,
losing 21-6 in that game.
Hey, they finished it out and beat them. Hey, that's
I understand, but the first thing you told me was Ohio State killed Alabama, and I let you know that it was a close game. Ohio State scored with about 2 minutes left they were protecting the end zone with Alabama throwing the ball into the end zone at the end of the game. And then you told me that Ohio State dominated early, and I let you know that Alabama led 21-6.
It was 20-21.
Anyway, nothing you've said makes any sense, but that's fine.
It was 21-20 at the half, and then
I understand that's not Ohio State's not dominating when they're losing 21-20 and losing 21-6 to start the game. So anyway, regardless, I'm not going to get into an argument about a game 10 years ago. I'm just letting you know that that's not accurate.
But let me tell you something. Georgia, they're clicking. They're dangerous, but I don't think I think it's kind of too late for them. Ohio State been cooking.
All right, Trey, you got Ohio State and who in the championship game?
Oklahoma.
Okay. Excellent.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate you being here, man.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. I let too many people off the hook that say ridiculous things. I'm going to stop doing that unless I want to get out of here. We do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. On your way out, I was all geared up to do like a 12-hour show too. But on your way out, vocfb.com. So you can probably sneak some merch in for your loved ones before the end of the year. You can go match up your favorite team with your favorite brand, the Voice of College Football, vocfb.com. And there you just have the standard main channel, I guess, the national channel merch that we see in front of us, the hats, the tees, the polos. There you go. And I don't know why we don't have mugs and koozies and such for tumblers for the main channel. I should have looked into that. Regardless, again, check out your favorite team: Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Iowa, USC, Oregon, Clemson, on and on and on, Florida State, Miami. We got about 25 teams listed there, and check them out. John D'Adamo sitting in for me on Thursday night. Parker Thune from Oklahoma 247 Sports is going to stop by to break down OU's quest to defeat Alabama. And John will be taking your calls on Thursday night as well, right here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you soon.